We are fighting for the emancipation of women. Down with class and male domination. Long live the economic, political, and social equality of women. We have helped the oppressed masses to rise and struggle. Along with the men, we are in the forefront, fighting for freedom. In the political program of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front, it states explicitly, the role of women is decisive for the revolution.
Young women sing this song during the war in Eritrea. The whole people has taken to arms to fight against Ethiopia. Their objective? National independence. Here is a convoy of the Eritrean People's Liberation Front. Over 30% out of some 70,000 freedom fighters of the EPLF are women. In China, Cuba, and Iran, women too fought in the streets and in the mountains. There was no alternative but the revolution. It was the... When men alone make a revolution, it is a question only of the redistribution of property and of productive forces. If, but only if, women participate, a thoroughgoing change in human relationships is possible. The Eritreans have understood this. They want to measure the value of the new society by the social position of their women, a genuine revolution. Eritrea, once an Italian colony, was illegally annexed by Ethiopia in 1960. This was a violation of the rights of a people, but it was not condemned for obvious political reasons. Ethiopia was the cornerstone of U.S. policy in Africa, and it was bigger and more powerful. In 1974, Marxist military officers overthrew Emperor Haile Selassie and called on the Russians for help. Since then, the Russians have been controlling this key strategic position on the Red Sea. The Soviet Union, like the United States before it, wants a partner that is big and powerful, and it has therefore been making massive interventions against the liberation movement. The only outlet to the sea for Ethiopia was not to be independent, whatever the cost might be. This power game has been responsible for the death of thousands of Eritreans, and hundreds of thousands have been uprooted. Here are people who have been wounded in the war, 2,000 crippled and badly injured. The struggle for self-determination goes back as far as 1961. By 1978, the freedom fighters had been successful in the military field. They controlled all Eritrea except for the capital city Asmara and the port of Massawa. Total victory was at hand when they encircled Massawa. But then, Soviet warships and airplanes attacked. Cuban divisions, experts from the German Democratic Republic, and Russian military personnel rushed to the aid of the Ethiopian regime, which was also being attacked in other parts of Ethiopia. The Eritreans were forced to retreat from the big cities. But none of the 6 massive military offensives has been able to break the resistance of the Eritreans. They have withdrawn into the mountains and captured enough military supplies to be able to continue the fighting without external aid. These war-wounded fighters live in a camp in the Sudan, where more than 10,000 Eritrean refugees are being taken care of by the People's Front. It is not far from the Eritrean border. Today, which happens to be International Women's Day, they are on their way to celebrate the occasion. Although it is painful going, they have walked 5 kilometers on foot and will have another 5 kilometers on the return journey in order to show their solidarity with women, who are the key to their revolution. By the time they reach the meeting place, it will be dark, and unfortunately, we will not be able to film. By 9 o'clock this evening, there will be more than 12,000 people gathered together, demonstrating for the equality and emancipation of women. The Eritrean revolutionary fighters have been joined by the women. Women's emancipation has always been spelt out in the EPLF program, but as long as it was only men who were fighting in the it was not a concrete reality. But by the early 70s, young women were joining the front in thousands. The program is taking shape. But how? One of the sentinels of the front. In Eritrea, both women and men are in the forefront of the fighting. They face equal dangers. They have equal responsibilities. There is no concession to femininity. Only in this way, say the revolutionaries, will we get rid of the prejudices against women as being inferior. At the beginning, there was a tendency to assign them to jobs like taking care of the refugees and looking after children. But the women demanded to be full participants in the front line of the war against the enemy, as a necessary precondition of their emancipation. Here is the enemy line just 2 kilometers away. We have many questions to put, but it is difficult to get answers to them. Even when we asked this freedom fighter how long she has been with the front, she was very reluctant to tell us. In fact, she has been 3 years with the front and has fought in 3 battles, the last being Nakfa. Her comrade is just a year with the front, but she too has taken part in 3 battles. The longest was Nakfa. Trenches are being dug in anticipation of the Ethiopian 7th offensive. A woman fighter is in charge of this sentry post. This was how men used to greet one another in Eritrea. Now this shoulder-to-shoulder greeting is practiced by men as well as men. But this by itself does not mean that women have been emancipated. The power structure responsible for women's subordinate position must be changed. This question is being raised in discussion groups. Women's demands for equality, if not handled properly, could lead to women hating men and a war between the sexes. When there is no enemy danger, behind the front lines, they talk between themselves. Thousands of fighters sit and discuss what are the reasons that led them to fight in the mountains. It is for the National Democratic Revolution. It is for the program of the EPLF.
Our revolution is national and democratic at the present stage. This means that all classes who are nationalists and in favor of national independence are fighting together against the foreign enemy. Internally, we are fighting against prejudices based on religion and sex. This stage of our revolution is one when all oppressed classes fight against oppression and exploitation. This is why we call our revolution national and democratic.
Back at the refugee camp, the wounded are being treated. All those who are wounded fighting in a conventional war later have the right to be compensated by the state, as they have fought for their country. In Eritrea, this is not easy. The war is seen as being a civil war. The freedom fighters are considered rebels. They have to create their state after driving out their enemy. If they do not succeed, they are doomed to live in a perpetual mourning and bitterness against the enemy. They would be forever without a home.
My name is Wezenet Teklo. I joined the front in September 1977. After 5 months of military training, I went to the war front and participated in a number of battles. I lost my leg in the fighting at Dekamare. Then I came here to the camps, where there are many fighters who have been disabled. But we continue our struggle at the economic and political level of the revolution. My name is Sahiri Mohammed. I joined the Popular Front in 1977. I was sent to the battlefront after 5 months of training. I fought in the Tigray and at El Abere. I was blinded at Nakfa and will not see again. But our struggle will not be won with guns alone. There is much to do here in the camp, too. My name is Wayne Ogbadsky. First, I was a member of one of the front's mass organizations. Then I joined the People's Militia. When we made our strategic retreat in July 1978, I joined the front. I fought at Adabur and was wounded in the second offensive. They took me to hospital with eye injuries. Now, as you see, I'm working here in the camp.
After the interview, the 3 women go back to their work. When you have lost a leg, you can still be independent, but blind. In fact, the 2 blind women are in charge of political education in the camp. All the injured are engaged in work according to their capacities. Here they are breaking stones to build a hospital. A woman carries this load, bringing it to the highlands. Usually, people who are injured and disabled are considered a burden. They may be taken care of and receive sympathy, but no one takes them seriously. Women have the same problem. An aggressive, male-dominated society views women as being somehow incomplete, and they are not taken seriously. Both women and cripples are weak and incomplete, and they are always downgraded. Due probably to the changed position of women here, the cripples are no longer being pushed aside. This camp, with its 12,000 refugees and war wounded, is like a laboratory of the future Eritrean society. Building, there is no distinction made between the and the disabled, between and the women. No one is excluded. In the society that these revolutionaries want to build, the value of a human being does not depend on health or sex. As women joined the front in the mountains, the first plan was to create autonomous women's units. as is done in some countries to show they are progressing towards emancipation. But this is fatally dangerous for the equality of women. This has been shown by the division of the army according to traditional sex lines. Even in the kitchen, the sexes are not separated. This is the community kitchen of the camp. Peasant women are hard at work. Looking at them here, it would seem there is no change in the role of women. But the fact is that in Eritrea, men are often engaged in so-called women's work. So that in a true sense, it is a revolution. A boy who would be idling in the kitchen would be thrown out by the women and reprimanded by his father. Nowadays, women demand that men take part in the housework, but not in a spirit of revenge. It is not an embarrassing obligation for men, but their right, just as the women have the right to participate in the armed struggle. There should be no domain from which either men or women should be excluded. Before, women's duties were limited to housework. We've put an end to that. Women have the right to develop their abilities in other areas, which used to be the men's domain. I am convinced that are equal and are able to work. Otherwise, I would not be sitting and cooking in the kitchen. Anything that was to do with technical things belonged to the men. Even the sewing machine was a symbol of male chauvinism. Now, women are allowed to operate it. Here, they are making clothes and military uniforms. Those who are wounded in the war are not only working for the revolution, but they are also taught an occupation which they can exercise when Eritrea is independent. For example, office work. The typewriters have been captured from the enemy. The people now have a lot of supplies which are being used to train people in mechanical, electrical, communications, and many other fields. These changes are all being carried out under the slogan, "The emancipation and equality of women are goals of our organization." What were the conditions from which Eritrean women have to be freed? This dance could show us. It is a traditional dance of the Muslims who live in the lowlands. There is not a single man among the dancing women. The women's world is quite separate from that of the men. Men think they are the only ones who are active and taking decisions for the society. Its masters, the ones who command. Women have to be subordinate to them and be their subjects. Woman is thought to be irresponsible, which is the reason why men must take the lead. In her family, it is her father and brothers who look after and protect her. And after her marriage, it is her husband. To control her sexual urges, she is circumcised. This is practiced by both Muslims and Christians. The clitoris is removed. A woman's life is seriously affected by